My name is Hajnalka Petric. I work as Program Officer in the Office of SDGs, and I will be the moderator of today's session. And this is the second session of this governance learning series, focusing on shifting the balance of power, elevating voices in agri-food decision-making. Very interesting topic. So it is really a great pleasure to have you all with us today. I would like to start with a few housekeeping reminders. This session is being recorded, and we will share the recording with all of you who attended the session. There is also interpretation from English to Spanish and from Spanish to English. You can find the language booth at the bottom of the Zoom screen. We ask you to keep your videos on and with your microphones muted so that we can give you the floor and then you can unmute yourself. Please use the chat box to make comments to the debate and also share any relevant materials that you would like to share with all the participants. And finally, you can use the Q&A, the question and answer functionality, again at the bottom of the Zoom screen to pose any questions to the discussants, and we may select some of them during the debate segment. Now, without further ado, I would like to invite now Dr. Stefanos Fotou, who is the Director of the Office of SDGs at FAO, to set the scene. Stefanos, the floor is yours.
Hi, Nalka, thank you very much, and good morning, good afternoon, good evening to all the colleagues that are online. I'm very pleased to provide some original, if you want, setting the tone remarks, as you said, because the subject of this webinar, it's something that it's really very, very close to my professional heart. I'm working more than 20 years on issues of sustainable development. And one of the things that I'm always asking myself, and I don't want to hear pessimistic, but I'm asking why sustainable development is not happening. And I do have a number of answers, including that sustainable development is not happening because all of us, as individuals, as organizations, as companies, as governments, we are looking at the short term. We have an inability to change. And we are framed by a development environment that is focusing only on growth and not on development. But there's another extremely important issue that sustainable development is not happening, and this is that there's a power imbalance. And this power imbalance is really at the heart of the unsustainable development. What's happening is that a very small number of individuals or organizations, most of the times of private interest, dominate decision-making processes, and they affect the majority of billions of people at the expenses of societal needs, environmental needs, and even, I will say, economic growth. I mean, at some point, there was a kind of understanding or a kind of narrative saying that, all right, we have not achieved a lot on society and environment, but we are achieving a lot on economic growth. And that's not correct, because we see the latest data, inequality is increasing, poverty is increasing, hunger is increasing. So we don't achieve anything. It's not that we lose in one front and we win on another. So this concentration of authority, it undermines not only the democratic governance, but it really undermines the entire architecture of the social, economic, and environmental backgrounds that we have decided as a humanity that we need to focus if we want to achieve sustainable development. So what I would like to do in the next 7 minutes is look at 3 major clusters of power imbalance. There's a lot of clusters of power imbalance. Explore some of the main challenges by these imbalances and maybe share some thoughts on outline pathways for solutions. So as I said, you can see power imbalance in every aspect of socioeconomic development. I want to highlight 3 clusters of power imbalance. The one is gender-based power imbalance. So gender equality, one of the most persistent and structurally rooted power disparities in many countries. We do say sometimes in low and middle income countries, but it's happening even in upper income countries, women are systematically excluded from decision-making processes, especially when it comes to agriculture and land governance. I was in African conference about a month ago, and I listened there that although the women provide most of the labor in agriculture, they don't own the land. So they don't have the rights on how this land is used. And there's a specific report from FAO, the status of women in agri-food systems, that the women represent about 48 to 71% of the labor, but they own less than 15% of the agricultural land. So the land ownership restricts access to resources and lowers participation in community level decision making. And it does not allow the women to be empowered and to take decisions for themselves, their family, and the community. So the absence of the women voices leads to policies that they overlook the women needs. Actually, this exclusion undermines the effectiveness of the food policies and reinforces cycles of intergenerational poverty and malnutrition. A second cluster of power imbalance is what I will say the social stratification. Unfortunately, we do have a lot of cases where social stratification based on income, but sometimes even social stratification that is based on race, on religion, unfortunately, still we have the social stratification in many countries, plays a major role in shaping access to resources and decision making. There are a lot of countries where millions, literal millions of people belong to marginalized groups that disproportionately affected by environmental degradation, food insecurity, and climate shocks, despite contributing even nothing to this crisis. I mean, you have the paradox here that the people that they suffer the most from the climate crisis, they don't contribute to the CO2 emissions. So they are the victims of these hidden costs of the way that our different development systems, including the agri-food systems, are working today. So the majority of the profits in the food systems do not go to this that they grow the food, but to those that they control the distribution and marketing. I was in a conference with the youth 2 weeks ago, and I have done a case study of coffee. And I came out with some figures that all of them are based in scientific journals and papers that they have been published. And it shows that a poor farmer in Africa that grows up coffee, it's producing, and I want to hear these numbers, it's producing around 500 kilograms of coffee every year, half a ton. This coffee will go through a number of processes and will end up in about 50,000 espresso shots, the ones that we enjoy. And with an average price around the world of $2 of each espresso shot, this will give a value of $100,000. So a poor farmer in Africa produces coffee that ends up in a value of $100,000. Do you know how much money the farmer is getting out of this value chain? Maximum $100. So 1 out of 1,000. And this is unacceptable, and this needs to change. So we need to bring the small farmers who are the backbone of food production with bargaining power and with much bigger returns. And the third cluster of imbalance of power is the concentration of economic power in the hands of very few transnational corporations. The agri-food value chain is one of the most highly concentrated sectors in the global economy. A handful of multinational corporations dominate each stage of the food production from seeds to supermarkets. A lot of numbers here. 3 companies control over 50% of the global seed market. 10 companies control more than 70% of the different labels that we see in our food products in the supermarkets. And we need to remember that this number, what we say the 50% by 3 companies, back in the 80s was just 15%. So we have an overconcentration. So this concentration reduces biodiversity, reduces social diversity, limits food sovereignty, and influences the public policies. Major challenges, of course, to move from the imbalance, the clusters of imbalance, the central challenge lies in the redistribution of power. But I have to say something here, that power is something that nobody will give up if they have it. Power is something that the ones that they don't have it, they need to grasp it. And of course, they need to grasp it with peaceful and democratic ways. And that's part, I think, of our duty and responsibility in the UN system and in the multilateral system to empower the ones that they need more power to gain it, as I said, through peaceful, democratic, and community-based approaches. So we need political sensitivity and complex, and we have very powerful actors that when they engage in the reforms, they use their existing dominance to not allow other actors to get more power. We have very weak participatory frameworks where many decision-making processes remain only top-down and exclude the grassroots voices and exclude, as I said, the ones that they produce the food. So those who need the most, like indigenous peoples communities, smallholders, women, they lack legal and institutional support. So they have a right, but they don't know how to exercise this right. So what could be potential solutions? My last point here. I mean, frankly, I think if any one of us had the magic solution, we would not doing this webinar today because these things would have been solved. It's a very long process. And as an environmental scientist from my side, I do believe on that all processes, even the social and economic processes, they go under this overall framework of evolutionary processes. And what is an evolutionary process? Is a process where we need a lot of ideas, that they are new ideas and they try to challenge the status quo and give the space and give the capacity to the communities and to the people that they have these ideas to grow some new ways that we do business, that we do community empowerment, that we do market structure. So we need this peaceful and democratic power shift. And as I said, the UN can help facilitate this transition. We can leverage our support to member states in creating inclusive policy platforms, promoting equitable policies, and holding power actors accountable. The accountability is an extremely important thing. And I must say here that many times we talk about the accountability of governments, and I think that there's a lot of level of accountability of governments. I mean, governments at least go to the people and ask their vote every 4 years. Their representatives are accountable to them. But I haven't seen a similar level of accountability from private actors, that they control a very big part of the value chain. So we can help in the UN and in FAO to build participatory mechanisms to enforcing accountability and advance rights-based approaches. And these rights-based approaches in food and development are crucial to empower citizens and civil society organizations to demand transparency, justice, and sustainability. Also, we need to, I think, empower consumers to rebalance power dynamics in the food systems. There is a claim that the food systems and the market reflects on what the consumers want, and this is not right, because the consumers at the end, they don't have a choice. The consumers will consume what they are given, and it's not the consumers that they have selected specific products. It's the ones that they define the market that they have selected these products. I mean, this is a case with almost all of the agri-food products. And I need to say also here that I'm a little bit disturbed when we call ourselves consumers. We are citizens. So we need to have a shift from food consumers to what I would say food citizenships. So we need for this to establish inclusive governance structures, ensuring that all stakeholders, especially the marginalized population, have a seat at the table. This is, of course, of a paramount importance for women farmers in particular, but also for youth and for communities that they don't have access to resources. So we need more or less to break the corporate supply chain oligopolies and the oligopsony by enforcing stronger antitrust laws, fair market regulations that prevent a handful of companies from controlling pricing and market access, and reward the ones that they really produce the food, and make sure that after the main ingredients for our agri-food products are produced, we have a fair and sustainable process to put them in front of the citizens, that they are empowered to do wise choices and close the unsustainable loop of the agri-food systems, which today, according to a FAO report, the SOFA report, it costs about $12 trillion per year on hidden cost when it comes to our health, to our environment, and to our society. So I wish a very good continuation of this webinar, and thank you for giving me the time to give some opening remarks. Heinalka, back to you.
Stefanos, thank you very much for these introductory remarks, and your remarks set the scene perfectly well for this session, for the forthcoming discussion. And thank you for so clearly outlining this complexity about power imbalances that you mentioned, based on gender, based on social stratification, and the concentration of power. And how these actually these empower certain actors in the agri-food system, and also how they lead to ineffective policymaking and decision-making. And so today's session, the three cases from Ecuador, Ghana, and Mexico actually will shed the light on some solutions that they find to address these power imbalances, competing priorities, and also conflicting mandates. And they will show us how they really were able to put structures and processes into place that enabled negotiation among the different actors, coalition building, and strengthening accountability, which you also mentioned, that every actor in the agri-food system has their own form of accountability, which need to be strengthened. So thank you very much again. Now, before we turn to our panelists, let me please give a very short background on this learning series and this second session in particular. So this learning series was sparked by a call for submissions launched by the FAO FSN Forum on how can FAO better support countries in addressing governance for agri-food system transformation. And we received 88 contributions from really diverse stakeholders from all around the world. And based on the submissions, we developed these three sessions focusing on 9 case studies with the main objectives, right? So this is really about facilitating a collective learning. We are sharing knowledge, but this is also a peer-to-peer exchange. The objective is also to disseminate lessons learned and good practices, and somehow foster this adaptive thinking and showcasing how these insights and successful interventions from one country could be useful for other countries all around the world. And finally, also, we aim at encouraging reflection on concrete ways to address governance challenges. Discuss about the strengths, but also about the limitations, the challenges, and then most importantly, really about the potential of policies, laws, and other governance interventions for inclusive, resilient, and sustainable agri-food systems. And we really didn't want to have just another learning series. We wanted to have a collective learning journey, and not just to present the cases, but also foster dialogue. So we really invite all of you to participate then in the debate session. And so for this authentic learning and the honest conversation, we asked our discussant not to sugarcoat the experience, no? So not only focus not only on the success, of course, we are going to talk about that as well, but also to point to the challenges, the limitations, and how these were addressed through different governance mechanisms. So today we have Ecuador and Ghana and Mexico, representatives from these countries with us, and they will show how the governance can really support agri-food system transformation in different contexts by giving voice to those who traditionally don't have a voice or have very little voice in policymaking and decision-making. So I would like to turn to Ecuador. The first panelist is Isabel Mejia. I will give a very short introduction of Isabel and also about the case. And then I will have one question composed of two sub-questions to Isabel. Isabel, it's a great pleasure to have you with us. Isabel Mejia is an agriculture engineer with a diploma in bioeconomy. She has focused her career on strengthening small and medium-scale agriculture through collective organization of farmers, fair trade, sustainable production, and solidarity economy. She currently promotes the policies and initiatives for family farming, and she leads the implementation of the National Agriculture Strategy for Rural Women and the formulation of the intersectoral policy for rural women. Now, we know that women play a vital role in agri-food systems globally, and Ecuador is no exception. In Ecuador, the majority of rural women are engaged in agricultural activities, and the majority of registered family farmers are also women. And so taking into account their voices is really crucial for an inclusive agri-food system transformation. Now, fortunately, in Ecuador, the National Agriculture Strategy for Rural Women was approved in 2020. And so exactly my questions to Ms. Mejia will be around this strategy. Ms. Mejia, so what were the concrete governance mechanisms that enabled rural women, this is a strategy for rural women, to voice their concerns, but also to influence the formulation of the strategy? And now that the strategy have been in place for a few years, how can they really contribute to the implementation and the monitoring of the strategy? Please point to the challenges that were encountered and how it was addressed, how they were addressed. It is your turn, Isabel. Thank you.
Bueno, muy buenos días con
Well,
todos y
good
todas.
morning,
Mi
everyone.
nombre es Isabel Mejía y
I'm
en esta
Isabel
ocasión,
Mejia,
hablo a nombre del Ministerio de Agricultura y
I'm
Ganadería del Ecuador.
represent the Ministry of Agriculture
Les
and
voy a contar un
Livestock of
poco
Ecuador.
de los retos que han
I
existido
will be
para la
sharing with you the
implementación de la
challenges in the
Estrategia Nacional
implementation of the
Agropecuaria para
National
Familias
Agricultural
Rurales, así
Strategy
como
for
los
rural
modelos de
women and
gobernanza
the challenges in
que
the
tuvimos que
governance
implementar
models
para esto, ¿no?
that were
Entonces, como para
required.
ponerles un poco en
So,
contexto, en el Ecuador existen
in
cerca de
Ecuador,
3 millones
there
de
are
mujeres
around 3
rurales,
million rural women,
las cuales el 71%
71% of
realizan
whom
actividades
are
agropecuarias
engaged in
y asimismo
farming
en el registro de agricultura
activities.
familiar
In
campesina,
the
el 70%
registry, family
de
farming
ellas
registry,
son mujeres.
70% of them are women.
Entonces, en el país podemos
So
hablar de
in
que
the
tenemos
country,
una
we can
agricultura
say that
familiar
we have
campesina con rostro de mujer, pero también
we
con un
have a
fenómeno que
family
afecta
farming with the face of
regionalmente
a
ya,
woman, but it's
que es
a
la
phenomena affecting the
feminización
whole
del
region,
campo.
which is the feminization of the
Adicionalmente, en los
countryside. In
territorios
addition,
rurales, pues tenemos
rural
otras
areas have
características
other gender
importantes, como por
gaps,
ejemplo la alta
such
presencia
as
de
the
mujeres
high
en la
presence
pobreza,
of women
altos
in
índices de
living in
violencia de
poverty,
género,
high rates of
así
gender
como el
violence,
excesivo uso
and
del tiempo de las
excessive
mujeres.
use of time.
Las mujeres en el Ecuador, en las
Rural
áreas
women
rurales, son las primeras
are the first
en levantarse y las
to
últimas
get
en
up
acostarse.
and the last to
Tenemos
go to
datos
bed
de
every day.
que trabajan 23
They
horas a la
working
semana más
23
los
hours per
hombres
week,
rurales
more than
y
rural
8 horas
men,
a la
and
semana más
8
las
hours a
mujeres
week,
urbanas.
more than urban
Entonces,
women.
visibilizando toda esta problemática y también tomando en cuenta que las principales
So
actividades que
keeping
se
in mind this
realizan por las
context and bearing
mujeres
in mind that
rurales
the
son
main
las actividades
activity
agropecuarias,
done by
es que el
women in rural
ministerio
areas is the
toma la
agriculture.
decisión de liderar la
The Ministry of
construcción
Agriculture
de
and
la
Livestock
Estrategia
in
Nacional Agropecuaria para
2019
Mujeres
led the
Rurales en el
development
año
and launching of
2019.
the National Agriculture
Finalmente se expide
Strategy
la
for Rural
estrategia
Women.
bajo acuerdo
The
ministerial
strategy
106
was
el
then
15 de
launched
octubre del
under the
2020,
Ministerial
también
Agreement
como un
in
homenaje
October
al Día
2020.
Internacional de la
And this
Mujer Rural.
is to pay
El
tribute to
objetivo
the
de este
International
instrumento
Day
pues
for
es
Rural Women.
visibilizar y
The goal
revalorizar
is
el
to
rol de la
showcase
mujer en
and
el
to
campo,
give
pero sobre
value
todo en el
to
sector
the
agropecuario.
role that women play
Y
in the
entonces
rural
es así
area
que
and
se
especially
parte
in
de
the
un
agriculture
diagnóstico
sector.
totalmente
We had a
participativo, escuchando
diagnosis
justamente
in
las
which we
voces de
listened
1.300
to
mujeres a nivel nacional
1,300 women
en varios espacios de
nationwide in
reunión, tanto
different
provinciales
meetings
como
that we
regionales,
held at the province
nacionales, ¿no es
level,
cierto?,
and regional level and national level as well. We were able to hear where the needs are, and also we heard about the proposals for solution. It is worth mentioning that we had support from international cooperation organizations like AFAO, and the role was technical support and financial support. I think that the most important role played by this type of organization is to be able to bridge the needs of rural women and the services that we needed, or that the services that the state needed to adapt to offer help to these women. So we implemented this strategy, and one of the most important results is that we do have a training program today and a technical assistance program, which is gender focused, and we offer the different technicians who are in the field and work with these women on a daily basis. These technicians have better tools today. In addition to that, we have the Super Rural Women Loan, which is granted to women, and there's no need for a co-signer or the spouse's signature. We seek to strengthen the economic empowerment of women. Another challenge that we were facing during the implementation was to give visibility to women, to rural women, because we didn't know who they were, where they were located, and the issues they were facing, maybe in theory, but we were not able to have the data to show that. Now, today, thanks to FAO support and the program that we have data. Today, we have a statistical portal with in which we can see how this productive and reproductive role is being distributed in the different chains, and we are able to see the different gaps as well. And we have been able to have a better decision-making process, and we're able to implement a policy which can be more effective, providing visibility to rural women. Another result, which is key and that was very challenging, is the governance model. We need to keep in mind that since the construction, we had the engagement of rural women. And as part of the ministerial agreement, we decided to create a space for dialogue, articulation, for technical assistance, and also a space in which we can monitor the implementation of this policy. We call it the Technical Roundtable for Rural Women, and women are part of this group. Well, this was very challenging because at the beginning, we needed to start with the planning phase, and we did that based on the diagnosis that we conducted for the policy for this strategy. However, in the second year, we wanted to know whether what was being implemented was reaching the rural women in the territories. We knew that the issues in one policy could be done in a homogeneous way. However, the territories are not homogeneous, and that's why we needed to look at the best mechanism to implement the solutions within the territories at a local level. We decided then to create rural women working groups at the local level. Well, the main challenge is that these spaces are the result of institutional willingness. However, some of the learnings we had is that our main partners are the local governments, both at the province and regional level, and we needed to create local regulations that will allow for the sustainability of these spaces that wouldn't depend on the authorities in turn. I think that the most important learning is that these spaces need to be kept and also managed by the civil society, in this case by rural women. And the reason for that is because we need to think about the concept of social the civil society demanding the state for incentive and services for them to have access to the right instead of a state trying to impose a policy on the civil society. In this case, women are those who manage this space, and that's how we're able to offer sustainability to these spaces. In Mani, we have a rural women roundtable, and women are still working on that. And now this is part of the local government internal management structure. So we have been working on this way, and thanks to the support of FAO and the technical assistance, we have been able to have a feedback loop. We are feeding from the local level to the national level, and also to have the possibility from the national level to reach the local level. This strategy will end this year, and we want these achievements to be able to be sustainable. And that's why the Ministry of Agriculture and Livestock in 2024 proposed this strategy to go to a higher level and to become a policy. In addition to the implementation, we were able to see that the needs of women are not only productive related. We need to think about health, technology, like other needs they have. And that's why the ministry is calling to other organizations within the government in order to offer visibility to this subject of policy, which is the rural women. Now we have 14 institutions which are working and are allocating budget so we can have the implementation of this policy for women, for rural women. Now, the challenge is to give visibility to this work that we're doing with women in rural area. Many of the institutions work either for women or either in the rural areas, but now we are thinking about working with rural women. So this is one of the challenges we're working on in the Ministry of Agriculture. Now, if we think about the learnings of this governance model of the technical roundtable and the policy that we have for rural women, we have created the intersectoral roundtable for rural women. Now this is a space for engagement of women through a empty seat mechanism. We have a committee for women in which we have members who are women from agriculture organizations, and the thing is that one of them will be nominated to be part of this committee, and she will be in charge of monitoring and at the same time proposing solutions in favor of rural women. So that's the experience in Ecuador, and I'm here to answer any question you may have. Thank you very much.
Ms. Mahia, thank you very much. I believe this is really an excellent example of how the role of rural women can be made visible and how their voices can be elevated, especially considering that, as you said, they work 23 hours more than rural men and 8 hours more than urban women in Ecuador. Let me please reflect on a few points that you said, and this would allow me also to link it to the introductory remarks that we heard from Dr. Fotu. So you mentioned that there is a statistical system at the ministry, and this is really important. This is sex desegregated, because we know that what doesn't get measured doesn't get done. So this is another very important way of giving visibility to the role of women and to their needs. And I really liked when you said that during the consultation, you were not only looking for understanding the needs of rural women, but you were looking for and gather the solutions that they offered, how to engage them directly in the policy-making processes. And then you created the Rural Women's Roundtable, not only at the national level, but also at local levels. And then there was this point about the ownership of the civil society. And this is also linked to the accountability that Dr. Futu mentioned, so that the state has its own accountability, but also non-state actors have their role, have their mandate in shaping policies and decisions. So there is the question of mutual accountability. And lastly, I think that there is a very important dimension of learning and evolution within this process itself, because as you said, your Ministry of Agriculture has decided to elevate the strategy into a policy. And so this also signals a very strong political commitment, but also reflects on a deep understanding of the complexity of the situation of rural women, the multidimensional realities that they face. And so that it is really important to go beyond agriculture and include other sectors, health, education, technology. And so your ministry has recognized this, and so you have put in place an intersectoral roundtable now for rural women with 14 institutions. So I think this is very important to stress how the rural women strategy, only under the realm of the Ministry of Agriculture, grow into an intersectoral policy for rural women. So thank you very much for sharing this experience. And there will be another round when I will come back to you and other discussions for some other final reflection. So this really gives an example of a systemic and holistic approach to food system transformation. Now, I would like to turn our attention to another continent and another country, Ghana. We have with us Mr. Harry Bleponi, who is the Deputy Director of Agriculture at Ghana's Ministry of Food and Agriculture, where he leads the horticulture unit within the Directorate of Crop Services. With over 20 years of experience in horticulture and tree crops, he has served as a specialist on key projects, including Horticulture Export Industry Initiative, Export Marketing, Quality Awareness Project, and the Ghana Peri-Urban Vegetable Value Chain Project. Mr. Bleponi, it is a pleasure to have you with us. Mr. Bleponi will talk about the Ghana Green Label Scheme, which is a multi-sector initiative, a certification program for safe vegetables. And as we will see, it has not only allowed improving food safety and nutrition and health of Ghanaian population, but it also generated other positive impacts. And so what we will hear from Mr. Bleponi is how this all was done. So, Mr. Bleponi, my question to you is if you could please tell us about exactly the process. What process was put in place for developing the Ghana Green Label Scheme to make it really inclusive to all stakeholders. And now that the scheme is in place, what is the governance mechanism that ensures that also smallholder farmers can participate in decision making, and that they can really, their concerns can be reflected in the design and most importantly, the implementation of the scheme? Mr. Bleponi, the floor is yours.
Thank you so much, and good morning to everyone. I will speak about the process for the Green Label certification scheme, how it got all started. Let's say between 2000 and 2013, there was that great concern about the safety of vegetable consumption in Ghana. The main issue was that within that same period, the Ministry of Health promoted the consumption of vegetables for good health and the nutrition. So the middle class responded very positively. So vegetable consumption became a very good avenue for supply of vegetables to the market. And in response to that, peri-urban production was very rapid whilst the production in the rural areas were very seasonal. So the concern about safety of vegetable being sold on the market became more and more greater because of the seasonality of the rural production. The peri-urban production resorted to the use of bad production practices and the abuse of agrochemicals, and the consumer became very much disturbed. This affected the market structure. So the system became very difficult for both the consumer and then the farmers who were doing the right thing. Because on the market, there was commingling of the vegetables that were produced complying to the good agricultural practices, and then those that were produced by not complying to the good agricultural practices. Around the same period, the Ministry of Food and Agriculture was also seriously promoting vegetables for export. But the production processes for export were very much regulated to ensure compliance to good agricultural practices using the Global GAP scheme. So as the concern grew greater and greater, we in the ministry started discussion with our development partners how we could solve this problem. So the issue of mimicking the production pattern for the European market for the domestic markets too. So the idea of having a label that will make it easy for the consumer to identify vegetables that were produced under the good production practices and then opt for it. We started this between 2008, thereabout, as a ministry engaging our development partners. By 2013, the development partners like the market-oriented agriculture project for by the Germans, and then the Ghana vegetable for the Dutch responded positively. So they agreed to partner us to get this initiative started. We engage with farmers, we engage with consumers, we engage with regulators, other regulators, to make sure that if it was possible to get this whole thing rolled out. And by 2017, we have, between 2013 and 2017, the engagement continued and more farmers subscribed to it because most of them were losing their business, and then more consumers also subscribed that if we do it, they will patronize it. And along the line, we did the pilot. It went on successfully. In 2017, we saw that it was going to be very difficult for governments to take on this responsibility because we cannot force everybody to comply. So to make sure that it is voluntary and then people subscribe freely, we have to cede it to the private sector to lead it. So a foundation was formed to run the Green Label certification scheme. For the foundation comprised the government agencies, that's the mandated agencies to ensure that vegetables are produced, the regulatory agencies that will ensure the safety and then the right use of agrochemicals, and then the standards authority, processors, farmers, and then exporters all came on board for us to constitute the foundation. It went on smoothly, and at the end of the day, the Green Label came to light. Now, for a farmer to be green label certified, it is voluntary. So you need to apply for it and then plan your production towards the certification scheme, the requirement of the certification scheme, and then take your records to ensure that it can be, your production processes can be audited by an independent auditing firm. And then after that, you will be granted the certificate if you comply and then pass the requirements. And your produce will be labeled and then sold on the market with the label. The issue here is that various actors were brought on board. Some of them did not really find it easy to relegate their mandates to delegate their mandates to the Green Label Secretariat to manage. So some didn't come on board, but our engagement with the broader group agreed, and then some of their mandates were ceded to the Green Label certification scheme to engage private trainers to build the capacity of farmers, to get the auditors to go audit their production practices, and then to make sure that the marketing and then the transportation and marketing processes are also complied with, and to make sure that the consumer get the safe vegetables from the market. At the end of the day, it so happened that to keep this thing going, it needs some sustainability mechanisms. At the beginning, some farmers thought that it was going to give them that premium price to sell their produce. And then some wholesalers and retailers also thought that it would give them that market opportunity to sell at a higher price. But because the main idea behind this is to make vegetables safe, or safe vegetables available to the market, the motive was not for profit, but to make it readily available for the consumer to pay for. And also because we do not want the farmer also to lose out and the traders also to lose out, we try to make sure that it is not a profit-oriented scheme, but just something that will serve as a public good. So this also made some of the participants or actors to draw back, because it costs to produce safe vegetables. So for the initial stage, our development partners were very key in mobilizing farmers, supporting their activities to kickstart the process. And then after that, they carry on by themselves. As at now, over 1,700 farmers have subscribed, and then they are producing and then being audited and then supplying their produce to the market. And even though our expectation about how fast it should grow has not been as we expected, we are making good progress with the scheme. One issue that we have worked on along the line since the scheme started on its own is to develop a traceability mechanism that will make sure that nobody can fraudulently acquire or place their produce on the market in the name of the label. So the market, the scheme has developed by itself since it was handed over to them, and then they have started this very year. They started implementing the electronic traceability system of the green label scheme. Progressively, it is shaping up, and then we hope that moving forward, it will serve the purpose as it is expected. The management of the governance structure of the green label scheme is rooted mainly in as a foundation. We have 9-member board that governs the operations of the green label. It is not a profit-oriented label, so as much as possible, mechanisms are put in place so that it does not unduly put financial burden on both the farmer and then the consumer who patronize it. Another issue also is that under normal circumstances, it is the mandatory government agencies that are supposed to be implementing this safety requirements, but they have traded off some of those mandates to the Secretariat to make sure that private actors also participate. The presence of the smallholder farmer, the exporter, the regulator, the processor, and then the wholesaler on the board make their voices and concerns brought to the table and then addressed along the line. This has been the story of the green. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Thank you very much, Mr. Blaponi. And this was another very, very interesting and I think fascinating experience of a very lengthy governance process. But I think what we need to acknowledge is that indeed these processes can be very lengthy, negotiating different interests and finding common grounds and finding solutions for common interests, but with different mandates. But that it worth the effort because you have come so far, and it has become really a very powerful scheme. And I see this very nicely linked to Dr. Futo's intervention on how you manage to empower smallholder farmers. First of all, protecting them by establishing the scheme, because in this way they can improve income, they can access markets, they can access different markets, and then they are not blacklisted, let's say, because of not unhealthy practices. I think also the aspect of having this 9-member board is very important to underline, because you have really representatives from the public sector, from ministries, regulatory agencies, the private sector, and the smallholder farmers themselves. And so this is indeed, as I understand well, the direct channel for smallholder farmers to voice their interest and challenges. And it's very interesting, and it's a very good case to learn from how you manage to navigate these diverging interests of the different actors. What compromises were made, but also that at the end of the day, some actors drew back, and but that there it was important to maintain the non-profit model, and because, as you said, if it was the cost of certification would be prohibiting and exclusionary for smallholders. And finally, the capacity development aspect, I also find very, very important, because this is another way of empowering smallholders to comply with the requirements. So thank you very much, Mr. Blaponi, again.
Thank you.
Now I would like to turn to We are going back to Latin America and turn to Mexico to Dr. Ramiro Lopez Elizalde, who is a neurosurgeon with advanced training in skull-based surgery, and he also holds a master's degree in health services management and extensive leadership experience in major health institutions in Mexico. He has authored or co-authored over 40 scientific articles, 6 books, and he's a level 1 member of the National System of Researchers. Now, with the training in health economics and digital health leadership, he now serves as Undersecretary of Health Policy and Population Wellbeing in the Ministry of Health of Mexico. Dr. Ramiro Lopez, it's an honor to have you with us. I will shortly introduce the case and then pose to you the questions. So Dr. Ramiro Lopez will talk about Mexico's landmark general law on adequate and sustainable food. And this law establishes the principles and the frameworks for promoting, protecting, and ensuring the human right to nutritious, sufficient, and quality food. And in this way, this law is practically translates the constitutional right to food into a practical legislative framework. Now, Mexico is among the first 30 countries in the world with the highest level of obesity and diabetes, these being the more prevalent among low-income population and as a consequence, exacerbating inequalities. This law, to date, is regarded as the most progressive approach in this area, and it addresses the entire food systems. So, Dr. Ramiro Lopez, could you describe indeed the process of formulating the law and how you enable the active and meaningful participation of various stakeholders? And now, how the law itself will specifically ensure that all people, including the most vulnerable, can exercise their right to nutritious, accessible, and culturally appropriate food. The floor is yours, Dr. Ramiro.
Okay, thank you very much. Buenos días a todas, a todos. Gracias, Patrick Analca.
Thank you very much. Good morning, everyone. FAO authorities, colleagues of the AFS, dear colleagues, in Mexico, we've taken a step forward, the sustainable food. We do have one of the most advanced laws worldwide, the law for sustainable and appropriate food, which was enacted in 2023. We took a step forward by creating an intersectorial group towards the safety food, and this is led by the Secretary of Health. This group brought together key sectors like agriculture, well-being, and the environmental area to approach the epidemic of obesity, as it was said earlier. So this created the foundations for a policy. However, this group lacked a legal framework, which was a binding one, and that's why the impact was limited. The law was enacted, and now we have an intersectorial group in which we have food, environment, and competitiveness involved. That's the name. It's called SIN-SAMAC. And this is a space for ongoing collaboration that coordinates the 4 levels of the government: civil society, private sector, and this is done to ensure the right to food. And the government is being highly involved. The law is the result of social fight and technical proposals for many years, voices that were not heard for many years. It recognizes food as a human right, and it's something that cannot be done only for some. But I want to be very clear. This is a law, and regardless of the advancement of the law, if it's not enforced, it will be empty. And now we need to implement this law and to be able to transform the empty plates. Instead, we want plates full of dignity for our population. For more than 30 years, the model in Mexico that we had was a model which was full of corporate interest. This was a system in which the local production and healthy production was only for the privileged ones, for the industries. And it was a system in which we had ultra-processed food with no regulation. There was no interest on the health of Mexican population and a big interest on increasing the profit of the corporations, which didn't have any interest on helping our country. The result was really sad to see. 1 out of every 3 children have either obesity or are overweighted. We have a lot of adults with overweight, high rates of death due to diabetes and chronic disease that could have been prevented. And the persistence of malnutrition, which is another issue that we face, and together with that, other medical conditions. So this law, it's a response, and that's why we're really excited. It's not only a medical solution, we're talking about a new legal framework, and now the government needs to act, prevent, and educate to prevent and protect the sustainable food systems. The principles of this law can be grouped in 5. 1, the sovereignty, food sovereignty and food justice. We need to respect the culture of our people, the gender perspective as a very important element, environmental protection, and the social and community engagement as well. We have started the implementation, and for that we have implemented specific actions. You know, the labeling that we use for food high in sugar and sodium in our country was a disruptive action. The regulation of advertisement oriented to children in order to prevent the fostering of consumption of this type of food with high sugar. We want to restrict the sale of ultra-processed products. This is something that is just in the beginning. In March, we launched this, and today these actions are being taken by a group led by the Secretary of Health and Education. We're working in the primary and secondary schools in our country, and we are overseen all the time in order to prevent children from receiving this type of food, which is not nutritious. So this is something that it's really key, and we are working on this regard. Furthermore, we need to preserve the culture and tradition of our indigenous groups. Also, we need to foster the production of small scale, and we need to work on campaigns which are focused on different age range and also keeping in mind the gender as well. So we don't want this law to be only something that it's on paper, which is being read by only the experts. We want this to reach the schools, the local markets, the rural and indigenous households and the communities which have been neglected. So we can not only recognize the right to food, we want to build the conditions needed to exercise that right. And for that, we need to have coherent public policies. We need to have the budget. We need the sustainable political willingness and a new pact, an agreement in which life, health, and territory can be above the profit. However, every step we take in this direction has been resisted by powerful economic interest. The industry which sell these products to our communities with high content of sugar and salt, now the industries are showing themselves as victims of this excessive love. They allege that they're losing money. They even are threatening the state, and they say they're going to divest on the region. But at the same time, we see the citizens which are organized. We see the commitment from the academia as well. And we see that they are really willing to be part of this transformation. This law, it's a tool for us, and we want this tool to be an example that could be replicated and that could be seen by others so we can get the feedback that we need. We need also the support from you all globally. And we need your support if you think that this is worth it. So I invite you to be part of our effort for a fair, healthy, and more sustainable agri-food system. We think that when the state recognizes the right to food, and when this becomes a specific and concrete public policy, we're going to be able to fight the hunger, and at the same time, we can offer hope and future to others. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Thank you very much, Dr. Ramiro. And this was really inspirational. Thank you for sharing these insights. But also, thank you very much for your honesty and sharing all the challenges that you have faced in the process of formulating the law, and also now when the law is in place, and what kind of power, let's say, resistance and struggles you have to face in order to implement the law. As you said, if it is not implemented, it doesn't really matter a lot. I think that this also links very well to the three power clusters mentioned by Dr. Futu. The law prioritizes the vulnerable groups, women's groups, smallholder farmers, and also tries to balance this power between big corporations, let's say, and the rest of the society. I think what you said is also very important about that this law prioritizes health, but also environmental stewardship, children's health, so the right to food and health, not only of the current, but also future generations. And the intersectoral governance framework that you have put in place, no? The intersectoral system for health, nutrition, environment, and competitiveness. So there are different institutions that joined forces to achieve a common objective and fight the challenge that really concerns the whole nation: malnutrition, obesity, and diet-related non-communicable diseases. And now I think it's really important now to follow what is going to happen, and how, effective planning, this implementation among different government levels, will help to avoid creating additional layers of bureaucracy and really implement the law. So thank you very much, Dr. Ramiro, again, for sharing the experience from Mexico. Now, this is time for questions, and it is your turn, the audience's turn. And we have been receiving questions, so I'm going to start reading some of them out. And these are really helping us to understand, what stands out, what resonated with you, what has inspired you, also maybe what was unexpected in what you have heard. And I would like to also acknowledge the presence of Ms. Gerda Barreto from Ecuador, who is the FAO representative of Ecuador. Thank you very much for being with us, and please let us know if you would like to take the floor at any moment. I would like to thank all the discussants and the participants for being so active listeners. I would like to read the first question to Isabel. This comes from Judith Ninga from Kenya, from the Cooperative Alliance of Kenya. And the question is, and she's going to be also the speaker in the third session of this governance learning series. So Isabel, the question is, how do you establish the Rural Women's Roundtable? What is the strategy? And what is the strategy for access to finance for rural women? And in relation to this, there is another question from Anna Rapazzo, who asked, how can these platforms, the Rural Women Roundtables, be institutionalized so that they really receive a consultative status, like, let's say, with the ministry? Isabel, please, if you can answer in a few minutes so that we can leave time also for the other questions.
Sí, muchas gracias. Bueno, voy
Well,
a tratar
thank
de
you. Let
responder
me
las
try
tres
to
preguntas
address all three
lo más
questions.
sintético que puedo. Bueno, creo que la ventaja
I believe the
del Ministerio de
advantage
Agricultura
of the
en
Ministry of
Ecuador es que
Agriculture in
tenemos
Ecuador is that
cerca de
we
1.200
have
técnicos en
nearly
territorio
1,200
que
technicians
trabajan
on
haciendo
site
asistencia técnica
doing technical
local.
assistance
Entonces,
locally.
a través de esta
So
asistencia
through
técnica que existe en
these
el territorio es
efforts,
como nosotros hacemos las
that's
convocatorias
how
a las
we
mujeres
call
rurales
upon
para que
rural
puedan
women
asistir y conformar
for
estas
them to
mesas.
join
Principalmente
these
son porque quienes tienen
working
esta
groups.
conexión con las
They
mujeres
have
para
this
realizar estas
link with
convocatorias
women,
y además
and
las mesas de mujer
also
rural son
these
lideradas en los
working groups are
territorios por el
led
Ministerio de Agricultura
by
y
the
Ganadería,
Ministry
que
of
está en Cúcuta,
Agriculture and
y
Livestock,
por el mismo
and
enfoque de trabajo que
by
tiene el
this
Ministerio en lo
work
local, se
approach.
relaciona con otros actores
It,
dentro de
it,
los
it
territorios,
liaises with other
la comunidad
stakeholders
técnica,
within the
mencionamos las
territories,
académicas,
international
que
agencies,
ya son de
academia,
conocimiento, digamos, de
which
los técnicos
are also
territoriales.
familiar with
Por eso digo, creo que esa es la
technicians
ventaja,
out in the
porque a través
territory.
de
That's a big
ellos, bueno,
advantage, like
hemos
I said,
logrado
because through them,
implementar
we've been
eso en
able
base a
to
su conocimiento
implement
territorial y las
these
relaciones
working groups
territoriales
based
que
on
ellos
their
ya manejan,
territorial
hemos establecido.
relationships.
Además,
That's how we set up
la
these
mesa
working
pues
groups.
tiene
These
como
working
esta
groups
creación
also have
normativa, porque está
these
creada
sort
bajo
of
acuerdo ministerial
regulations. This is an agreement
para la
among
implementación de la
ministries for the
Estrategia Nacional
implementation of
Agropecuaria de
the
Mujeres
national
Rurales,
strategy
donde
for
nos
rural
dice
women.
los roles de cada
And
uno
we do have
institucionalmente,
clear roles.
pero se
But
ha
also,
priorizado también pues la participación de
priority has
mujeres.
been set
¿Cómo
on
se va a
the involvement
institucionalizar
of
esto?
women.
Pues
How
toda
to
parte política
institutionalize this
agropecuaria
for
de mujeres rurales es a
agricultural
través del decreto
policy? Well,
ejecutivo,
that's through an
con el que se
executive
pide la
order,
política, también se crea la mesa
creating
sectorial
this
para
intersectoral
mujeres rurales. De
working
hecho,
group for
nosotros
rural women.
manejamos
In fact, we have
como un espacio que se llama el
uh,
Gabinete Sectorial de
the
Desarrollo Productivo,
sectoral
donde ya está creada esta mesa
production
justamente, la mesa
development
intersectorial para la
group,
formulación de la
where we
política.
have a working group
Entonces, por
for
normativa,
policy
hemos
formulation. So
aprendido
there
que
is a
esa es la mejor
regulation.
decisión, es el mejor
learned
aprendizaje que hemos tenido,
we have learned
crearlo
that
por normativa.
we should institutionalize this to over and above the institutional changes that may take place. This is created and established by law. I believe I've answered all three questions, Jainalka. You let me know. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Isabel. We have a couple of other questions from Judith Niga, so let's try to unmute her. She had a question to Dr. Bleponi. If you could concisely, can you hear me? Okay, please go ahead, Judith.
Come again? I didn't get the question.
You had a question to Harry Bleponi. Do you want to read ask the question? So because I think now we overcome some technical issues, and so we are able to give you the floor.
Yeah, thank you very much. And I take this opportunity to thank Harry for the good presentation. And my concern was regarding the Green Label certification. I wanted to know whether it covers certification for the processed foods by the processors, taking into account that a lot of processed foods are harming the human beings, and if not controlled, then we'll have cases of lifestyle diseases because of consuming these foods in large number as compared to the traditional indigenous foods. I don't know the practice in Ghana, whether the consumption of traditional foods is higher than the consumption of the processed foods. I hope I'm clear on that, Harry. Thank you very much.
Yes, you are very clear on that. I think that the consumption of the indigenous foods, especially the vegetables, are very high. If you take the nation as a whole, but if you take the cities, the major cities, we have the exotic vegetables, which are their consumption is much higher than the indigenous vegetables. And that is where the challenge was, because the exotic vegetables are produced mainly or mostly in the urban production clusters throughout the year. So the concern of food safety was very high among the urban production. But when it comes to processing, we're talking here of fresh vegetables. So these are normally minimally processed, and then those type of processes are also taken care of by the Green Label certification scheme, not the grains and then the nuts and that are highly processed. Those ones, the Green Label does not cover those ones. Thank you.
Thank you, Judith, and thank you very much.
Thank you.
There was another question to Mr. Bleponi, and so I would like to ask if Mariam Rahmanian could unmute herself and ask the question.
Yes, hello. Thank you very much.
Hello.
Hi, everyone, and thank you for your presentation. It was very interesting. So I have two questions. One is, you said that auditing is expensive, but you also stressed that the foundation was non-for-profit. So I'm wondering who is paying for the auditing of these farmers, and in what way are small farmers who are maybe producing for the local market, not the bigger farmers who are producing for export markets, how are they supported to participate in this scheme? Does the foundation maybe cover the costs of auditing, for example? And the other one is this foundation, is the government, for example, the Ministry of Agriculture, represented in the board of the foundation in any way? Or is it purely a private foundation? Thank you very much.
Thank you, Maria. I think I'll start with the second one. The ministry is represented on the board, and also other government agencies also are represented, especially because we have a mandate to place some rules that we cannot fully overlook and make sure that everything is going as is expected by the law. Then, beside us, we also have development partners who are very much who have keen interest in seeing that vegetables are consumed, and then to enhance the health needs of the nation and then the nutritional status of the people. So they have an interest and they support most of these activities. And this is where the issue of paying for the audit comes in. For the start, most of the farmers that were involved in the green label certification schemes were sponsored by these development partners to have their initial auditing and that subscription. They normally, a farmer who has expressed interest would have paid for 3 things. That is the auditing, capacity building, and then some administrative expenses for the secretariat to go on. But this is not allowed to overcrowd the cost of the certification scheme, because what happens is that there is an anticipated increase in patronage from those who subscribe to the scheme, and then access to the high value end of the market that makes it profitable for farmers who subscribe to the label to continue in business. So that is how the cost is taken care of. For now, the initial participation is taken care of by development partners. Thank you.
Thank you so much for your exhaustive responses. They're really to the point, very, very precise. We have very many questions. This is great. So what I would like to propose that now we go to Mexico. Dr. Ramiro Lopez, are you ready? There are many questions to you. I would like to propose that maybe we collect 3, and then we go to Ecuador, and then we come back to Mexico. Is that okay with you? Okay. So I would like to invite Shiva for her question to Dr. Ramiro Lopez. Are you here with us?
Yes, of course.
Hi, good evening, Mr. Lopez. It was a very insightful presentation, and I'm seeing to connect with you because back here in India, we're also facing a lot of diabetes and obesity, and something that you're doing is very valuable for us here. My question is, what was the process? I mean, like, how did you mobilize this into a policy? Like, what was your consultative process, one? And second question is, like, how do you monitor what's happening on ground? Because, like, it's fantastic that you have this policy, and I wish we could also replicate and have something back home. But then also, once you have that law in place, what are your monitoring measures or your benchmarks? Or you probably have a huge paraphernalia, because I understand that this was a collaboration between three ministries, if that's right, like food and competitiveness and I'm sorry, I'm forgetting the third one. So if you could just maybe highlight how did you mobilize this? What was the process? that you use to make it into a policy? And second bit is related to monitoring. How is it that you do that successfully? Thank you. Thank you so much.
Una de las, creo que lo que fortalece
I think that what allows for the strengthening of these laws and all these initiatives is that our president, Claudia Sheinbaum, sees health as a policy of the government. For all these processes to become a reality, the policies that have been implemented over the last years in order to foster healthy settings have been taken again. And today, the 2025-2030 plan is fostering these type of policies. As a result, we are inviting all other secretaries within the government so we can materialize the project. When health is in the hands of the system of health in the country, I think that's when we face issues. And this is one of the advantages we have since the implementation of the labeling scheme, which is something that happened back in 2020. Back then, Andrés Manuel López Obrador, the former president, knew exactly the importance of this type of regulation. And the resources were used properly in this program, and the resources were used in effective initiatives. Regulation of advertisement oriented to children, which is something that was implemented back in 2014, was something that received the support from the main leaders of the country. And it was not only led by the Secretary of the State. So today, any proposal one may have around this topic is even stronger. And the testimonies that aim at fostering the health systems globally will be welcome. For instance, the testimonies that we have after the implementation of the labeling system, after the regulation and the increase on taxes, has allowed us to see results on the population. For instance, 44.8% of people have reduced the consumption of ultra-processed beverages, and 38.7% of youngsters have reduced this consumption as well. However, there's a proportion of the population with a completely different socioeconomic level. So when you understand what's going on, you may make decisions which will favor these laws that could really be effective enough.
Thank you very much, Dr. Ramiro Lopez. I think you pointed to the importance, and you and also Isabel pointed to the importance of the normative framework. So we all, I think the dilemma that we all always or very often face, like the usefulness of policies, the usefulness of legislation, and I think what we can definitely say is that they are not only having legislation, only having policies is not sufficient, but they are indispensable. right? They gave the basis, the normative reference framework, the enabling environment. And also you pointed out the importance of the high-level political commitment. That is also crucial. Without that, things are not really working. We still have 2 questions to you. And from Anna Rapazzo and then Laura de Mateis, if you would like to read out your questions, and then I will turn to Ecuador. Anna?
Good afternoon, everybody. Very interesting. Thank you very much indeed. I'm very interested how public policy followed by robust institutional investments in application, because this is often a very big gap. So very interesting how the legislation that is, as Ainalka was saying, the backbone for anything else to happen and have a common language and boundaries and opportunities is backed up by robust investment in how to make it work in concrete. So something that is very basic as recognizing by principle in the major document constituting the state that everyone has the right to food is like that translated into a concrete opportunity for the right holders to exert and their rights and for the state to fully fulfill their obligation in making that right realized for everyone. So that's very interesting. And I wonder if you can also tell us how you plan to have long-term sustainability again of these efforts, how these social and political dynamic mirrored in the public investment into that at multiple level has also thought to the future, how these become normal practice in how policies on food and agriculture could be implemented in the long run. Over.
Thank you very much, Anna. Maybe I ask Laura to ask her questions as well. And also, if you could please introduce yourself when you take the floor, and or also in the chat for those of you who previously asked questions.
Absolutely. Thank you, Hanaka, and thank you, Dr. Lopez. I am Laura de Mateis. I am an agri-food systems expert in FAO. And I'm just going back to the theme of today, so the power balance. And I'm wondering, you mentioned that the industries are now putting pressure on the government, acting as a victim of these laws. So I'm trying to understand how the government is navigating this power pressure from the industry and doing so with the other social actors, academia. I would like to know more about that. Thank you so much.
No sé si ya sean las últimas preguntas.
Was that the last question for me? Should I start answering the questions, or is there any other question for me? Well, if there are no other questions, I think that one of the main challenges that we face when it comes to the transformation of agri-food systems is been the resistance from the industry. This industry has rejected regulations like the warning labels and any restrictions we may see at schools. So during the law formulation, those industries tried to influence in Congress to try to have weaker measures, and they wanted to put that type of pressure. However, thanks to the mobilization of the civil society and the leadership of the health system, we were able to use the regulation to safeguard this measure. And that's why we created the SINSAMAC, so we can protect the agri-food system policies. So we need to offer support to this committee, so this committee could be there for longer, always working towards the civil society. Our main partner is the population. Our most important partner is the population. Despite of any design we may have with any technical assistance, despite all that, if we do not have the population as our partner, even if you invest a lot of money, even if you put a lot of effort, you won't be able to achieve positive results if you don't have the population as your partner. So I think that healthy food for our countries is something has to be a policy of all governments in our countries. And if we were able to do that, I think that the path will be easier and shorter. That's all I have to say. I just want to respect the time. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you very much. And also being considerate about the time. Your intervention presentation generated many questions. Very, very interesting. So actually, there are more questions to you, but I would like to invite those of you who have questions to Dr. Ramiro Lopez to indeed put them again in the chat, maybe, so that he can answer them in the chat. Or if there is no time or Mr. Lopez needs more time, he can also send the answers to us and then we will forward to the group afterwards. Because now I would like to turn to Isabel. Isabel, are you here? There are two questions to you. Thank you again, Ramiro Lopez, Dr. Ramiro Lopez. I will turn to Isabel Mejia with the two questions. I think there are two questions to you, and then I will ask you all, the three discussants, for a very short final reflection. So I think there were Anna Rapazzo and Laura for with questions to Isabel. If you could unmute yourself. First, maybe Anna and then Laura.
I don't remember exactly the formulation because the discussion is very rich and your points of view perfectly complement one another, add pieces of the entire puzzle between people, institutions, public investments, and private actors, nuances that made me think. The question is again for you on long-term sustainability of that. Is there any plan, for instance, to extend the influence that is now directly targeted to the specific rural women strategy, to extend that influence and voice to the broader set of agriculture and food policies, including maybe the socioeconomic policies that allow them to exert the role of game changer as they have had until now? Over to you.
Thank you, Anna. And Laura, please go ahead, and then I give the floor to Isabel.
Yes, thank you. I was wondering whether the work that you are leading on shifting the power balance in agriculture is also affecting or changing the power balance at deeper levels inside families, inside communities, in women looking at their own role in society. If you could share any reflections on that. Thank you so much.
Bueno, muchas gracias por las preguntas.
Well, thank you for your kind questions.
Permítame un momentito, por favor.
Bear with me just a second.
Perdón, estamos con temas técnicos aquí.
Apologies, we had a technical glitch here. Well,
para retomar las preguntas,
back to your questions. Thank you again. Like I said, the implementation of this strategy has been a huge challenge for our ministry. However, thinking of sustainability, Anna was referring to, we had this elevation of this strategy into a sectoral public policy for rural women. We have 14 government agencies, including, in our case, the Ministries of Social Inclusion, Health, Education, the public banking, public bank, People's Solidarity Bank. So we call upon several agencies to make this visible, specifically for farmers and sustainability. Yes, we try to offer that through this governance, but with this executive decree putting a timeline of 10 years, which we believe it's a time frame where we can make changes, considering that we will be working 14 agencies together, strengthening capabilities not only for production of agriculture, but the other capabilities which are necessary to for economic empowerment. Back to the second question, though. What we've seen is that women, after the training on productivity, as well as a gender, with the support of transformative gender program with FAO implemented in 2 provinces, and after an assessment we are implementing now, we came to realize that by empowering women in, letting them know that they have a role over and above reproduction, they do make a contribution. We have this ill conception that what they do at home, plus work, and since family farming is also part of the household, well, they take it as a help, just as a help. But when we teach them that the role they play are important and then they contribute economically, that's when there's some sort of awakening, and they start to see themselves differently, and they start they're building this self-esteem. We went through an assessment with the planning authority, where we came to realize how women have been growing in terms of self-esteem with this economic empowerment. But with the tools and the training and the kits and the credit loans or the credit lines, so that they can strengthen themselves. Assessments showed us that husbands will not allow them to attend meetings. But if they were to pay, if they were to pay, they would pay that fee for these training programs, because now they're producing their farms can have healthy production, and they are producing more than their husbands. So they're now teaching their husbands so that they can produce better in the other half of the plot, so to speak. So that's what women would tell us, among many other testimonials. But my point is, I really believe that working for empowerment or giving them tools for economic empowerment help everybody else, and then building this self-esteem. That's why it's part of the policy for rural women we're building. The ultimate goal is strengthening this economic empowerment of rural women together with other the agencies involved. I hope this was a good answer.
Yes,
thank you.
This was a very good question and a perfect answer. And you showed how important self-worth Now, these are the first steps are really in this process of empowerment and how economic empowerment initiatives really have changing relations, power relations also in other spheres of life, including in households and then in the wider community. Thank you very much, Isabel. So this gives us time just for the final round of reflections. This was a very rich discussion with three incredibly interesting cases and very, very good questions from you, the audience. Thank you so much for that. I would like to ask now Mr. Blaponi. We have a final time for final reflection, maybe of 1.5 minutes for you each. Any insight that you would like to share? What emerged for you? What was unexpected? Something new that you have learned? Or what is the final reflection also that you plan to share with your colleagues in your country?
Yeah, thank you. I think the introductory remark was very spot on. It puts the whole discussion into context, and then how the need for power balance in the food system should be addressed. And I think it looks at the various actors that has to put in a very conscious effort to make sure that it is quite inclusive. Now, one thing that I think I have learned also from the discussion is the sustainability of all this mechanisms to get everybody on board. It is something, it is a right, but it comes at a cost. And there must be much investment into it so that the voices can be heard. Working with my development partners, they support mostly some of these things. And they also have their own interests. So they know where to put their money to get some form of results that they want. But if you put it into a complete context, you realize that if I take, for instance, the Green Label case, at the time that development partner investment should be looking at promoting the marketing side of the scheme, the development partners were interested in building the capacity of farmers. But the main issue is that when farmers produce, it must be driven by market. And this is not a profit-oriented thing, but so if the market is big, the farmers supply more and they make money out of the scale of the demand. So financing to make it sustainable is very key, and we should look at where the need of this power play shifts are, and that would have a greater impact on the food systems than having stuck interest. I think that is what I have learned from the insight I've gotten from this discussion. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Mr. Blaponi. I'm incredibly happy to hear this. And well, I think we wish you lots of success and strength in the next phase of the certification scheme. And hopefully there will be very many, good initiatives also in sustaining and financing the scheme. Isabel, the same question goes to you about your takeaways, insights. anything that you feel you have learned or will share with your colleagues in Ecuador?
Sí, muchas gracias.
Thank you.
La verdad creo que
Actually, I
después de la experiencia que hemos tenido con
believe
el
after
tema
the
de mujer rural,
experience
es
with rural
necesario
women, it is
el tema de
necessary
primero la visibilización
first
clara
to
del
make a
sujeto de
clear
política al que
visibility of
nosotros
this
como Estado
subject of
estamos atendiendo a
policy
veces como Estado
we are
queremos
serving as a
muchas
government.
cosas, pero no
As a
sabemos
government, we want to
con
do
quién
lots of things, but we
ni
don't
dónde
know
están ni quiénes
whom,
son. Entonces,
where they are,
una,
who they are.
lograr esta
So
definición
one is to
efectiva
make
de
this
quiénes son
clear,
los sujetos de
effective definition of
política y
who
crear
is
esta
the subject of
visibilización.
policy, and
Los
then
datos son
create this
importantes
visibility. Data are
porque una teoría
critical.
sin dato
Theory without
no sirve
data
y tampoco
is
un dato sin
useless,
teoría, ¿no?
and as well as
Entonces necesitamos conjugar estas dos
data
cosas
without theory. So we
para
need these
poder
two
trabajar
things
de manera
merged
efectiva y
together so as to
eficiente.
work
Y ya
effectively, and then
llegando a la integralidad,
call upon
necesitamos mirar la ruralidad, en nuestro
looking
caso,
at reality in our
también, y
case
los sectores en el que
in a
trabajemos de manera
comprehensive
integral.
manner,
Cuando
in
uno
an
interviene solo, pues
integrated manner.
no
When
podemos
you
hacer mucho porque
intervene
las
on your own,
necesidades
we
son
cannot do much.
multifactoriales.
Needs
Entonces,
are
necesitamos
huge.
atenderlas
So
de
we
esta misma
do
manera, con
need to serve
integralidad.
them
Aunque parece un
in
reto,
a
parece que la primera opción que
comprehensive
debemos
manner.
hacer.
It's a strong challenge, but this is
Muchas
up to
gracias.
us to face it. Thank you.
Thank you so much again for emphasizing the importance of evidence of data for informing effective policymaking. And I look forward, and we all look forward to the intersector policy for rural women, its formulation and then implementation. And I wish you great success with that, Isabel. And so finally, Dr. Ramiro Lopez, what would be your final takeaways?
Thank you. Considero que el éxito
Consider that
de
the
las leyes
success
para una
of
alimentación
laws
saludable y las
for
normas
healthy
y las
food
acciones
and
que
rules
de
and
ellas emanen
regulations
requiere de la
arising from it
participación de todos los
involves
actores,
the
gobierno,
participation, engagement
población,
of
la
everyone,
industria.
government,
Sin embargo,
population, the industry.
consideramos una
However,
industria responsable
this
que le
industry has to be a
interese la salud de la población
responsible
y cerrarle el paso sin
industry,
que nos
looking
tiemble
after
la mano,
people's
sin que titubeemos.
health. And
Aquellas
we have to be
empresas que enferman,
firm with
y
those
esto
businesses
lo
that make
hacemos
people
con
sick. If we
convicción,
do this with
vamos a construir
conviction,
juntos
we will be building together
y vamos a generar que en nuestros
and we
países
will make our
se
countries
valore la equidad, la
to
justicia
value equality,
y la salud que todos queremos
justice,
sea
and health that we
sostenible.
all need and make it
Todos tenemos un papel
sustainable.
fundamental
We all
para
play
asegurar
a
que estas
key
leyes
role in
alcancen sus
guaranteeing
objetivos
these
y
laws
transformen
to achieve their
nuestros
goals and
sistemas
change
alimentarios
our food
y le den
systems
bienestar a la población.
to
Estoy
provide
de acuerdo
well-being
con
for the population. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Indeed, again, emphasizing the importance of collaboration, that every sector, every actor in the agri-food system has a role, and the importance of fostering equity, paying attention to justice in these processes. So I think that just a few closing words, we are perfectly on time. I also would like to thank the interpreters who were accompanying us today and who did an excellent job in helping us just with the interpretation. So thank you very much. I really would like to emphasize that really sustainable development cannot be achieved without addressing inequities embedded in food systems, in broader social political structures. And so rebalancing the power is necessary for this transformative change. And this can be done through inclusive and participatory governance processes. And so, as we could observe also from the interventions from today, this is not only a technical challenge. No, this is profoundly a political one as well. And so these entrenched power imbalances across gender, class, corporate structures, they need to be addressed. It's fundamental to address them. And really, without redistributive justice, the efforts to remain impartial is indispensable. So I would like to thank you again very much. My colleagues shared the information about the third session of this learning series, which is scheduled for the 24th of June. And in this session, we will hear about experiences from India, Kenya, and the United States. So with this, thank you very much again. Have a lovely rest of your day and see you at the third session.